You're listening to the Silver Phoenix Happy Hour with Blaze and Ken. And now, Blaze and Ken.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Silver Phoenix Happy Hour. I'm Blaze.
I'm Ken.
Hi, Ken.
Hey, Blaze. Wow, we have a fun show tonight. I think we got a lot to talk about. Actually, we're actually coming out of Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how did you wind up celebrating the holiday?
4 hours on the road in traffic. That's the negative. We'll get that out of the way
Of
right away.
course.
It was crazy, crazy traffic. But once I got there, it was so nice. My family, my Aunt Donna, I said, the best cook in the family. She had quite the spread, and my whole family was there, actually. My cousin Lacey came later on in the night with her two kids, and it was awesome. We had such a great time. Watched football, but mostly just spent time together, catching up, and great time. How about you?
I helped my mom cook a full dinner for like 2, 3 people.
Okay.
Everything. She got like a 20-pound bird, and there was like nobody there. That's just her normal thing. She always goes bigger or go home, and she never goes home. So, you know.
That's nice. So what did you
Um,
do with the leftovers then if you had that much turkey?
Well, no. So I helped her make the stuff. She
Okay.
kept all of it.
Oh,
And then I came home and actually cooked my own Thanksgiving dinner for the following night. And
okay.
then those were my own leftovers.
Gotcha.
So, it's become a weird tradition lately like that. Um, but yeah, no, I like to repurpose a lot of stuff. I got an Instant Pot a couple years ago. One of the major things that I use it for is for making stock, and I made an incredible turkey stock for a soup
Hmm,
that's actually cooking, I think, right now.
nice.
And
I'll be
every
right over.
good. It'll only be a 3-hour drive. Don't worry about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no kidding.
And then I repurposed a lot of it and made a take on a shepherd's pie, where it was I shredded up turkey, put some seasonings in there, some vegetables, and then layered it with stuffing and mashed potatoes and baked it. And it fantastic, actually.
Sounds really good. Shepherd's pie always reminds me of like the school lunch cafeteria. The Catholic school I went to, we had shepherd's pie a lot. It was like shepherd's pie and pizza, and I don't know. I just remember certain dishes. That was one of
You
them.
obviously had a better school than me, because growing up in a huge school system like Clifton, the food was like ridiculous and simple. I remember the biggest thing that everybody loved was the day that they would do pierogies, and I like
Mm,
pierogies, but man, they were not fried,
yeah.
and they sat in a container that thick of oil, and all it was just oil dripping out when they put it on your plate, and I'm like, okay, I don't know
Okay.
why everyone raves or loves it, but I get it, I guess.
Speaking about stuff that's stuffed, like the pierogi, for the leftovers, my aunt was super clever this year. And I don't know if she did it last year and I just didn't take any home or have any, but she invited us all back over the next day. Excuse me, the next day. And she made empanadas. I'm
Oh,
calling them
nice.
gobble gobble empanadas because it was pretty much everything that she had left over. It was delicious. There was gravy, there was turkey, there was some mashed potatoes, not like overwhelming amount. There was that little touch of cranberry sauce. So you had the sweet in one bite and then the extra salty savory in another. It was delicious. And she ended up frying them the night I was there, but she sent me home with a couple and I air fried them and they were just as good air fried, delicious, crispy, so good. So that's my new my new favorite after thing. Actually, in general, I'm going to try empanadas with a lot of different dishes now, just because I don't think about it.
Was there any stuffing in there too, or was
Yeah,
it
there
just
was.
the
Yeah,
okay, yeah, because I'm like, that sounds interesting. Like, that's something I would probably wind up, experimenting with and trying to do, because I love cooking. I really love cooking and going outside the box or stuff. Actually, I wish Nicole was here now so she could hear this conversation. She could probably help. You know what? We're helping her set up more stuff for the future. That's what we're doing.
absolutely. I think maybe you'll get your Christmas wish maybe in December. We shall see. Which, speaking of, it is December 1st. So crazy how November just flew on by.
It did.
Lots of birthdays. And happy birthday to all my friends who celebrated birthdays in November. And just it was a great month. But I feel like now that Christmas is here, it's like, all right, we have 25 days. Well, Hanukkah too. So you have Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa. You have all of those holidays coming up, and that
Yeah,
means a lot of gifts. I don't know if you did any Black Friday shopping.
not Friday, but Saturday. Yes.
Okay. So I co-wrote a book back in the
Yes.
day in like 2011 called The Most Well-Traveled Squirrel in the Whole Wide World. Hence why I'm drinking some blind squirrel today. But it's come back out again because it's a series. And the first book we had in Barnes and Noble and QVC, it was really exciting. My co-writer Andrew Romano is coming on today. Voiceover artist, he's a financial advisor. He's an all-around really good guy. He does a lot of charity work. He just came back from a trip to Jamaica. But we're going to talk a little bit about the book, or I'll let him do most of the talking about the book. But it was exciting because it came back up online and it's now for sale on Amazon, ebook and the hard book, and it's just super exciting. So, so we'll see what he has to say about it soon.
Hey, listen, I might have to hit him up for some financial tips and tricks there. So,
Yeah, maybe so. All right, so let's get into the toys before we bring him on. So let's talk early 10s, 20s, 30s. What was the popular ones? Do you remember which ones would have come out that were the big hits of the decade?
oh my God. I mean, I wound up going through a couple of things like around our era, like when we were born.
All right.
And I
Well,
know,
I do remember, not remember personally, but I do know just from doing research, the rocking chair, like a wooden rocking chair, that would have been the 10s, 20s, 30s, let's just say.
right, right, right.
Toy trains,
Wait, I'm sorry, say it again.
toy trains,
Oh yeah.
dolls, of course. Like I'm
Hmm.
not sure when Raggedy Ann came out, but I had one of those that was like passed on in my family. Yo-yos, that was another one.
Of course.
That was definitely in that decade. The 40s would have been Legos, huge.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, I see the kids playing with Legos now. There's Lego World, and it's
Well,
really expanded.
well, you got to remember too when that company first came out, it wasn't the Legos that we thought of. They were actually made out of wood.
Right.
You know, it wasn't until later on where they actually switched over, and I think it became like a big, an easier production fix for stuff too.
Right, absolutely. Then the 50s, we had the Barbie, which I think we're going to actually have an episode where we talk about the life of Barbie, because I think when
We
you
have to.
research, it was wild some of the things that we found out about Barbie.
You and I
Um,
went down a very weird rabbit hole during pre-production just
we
discussing
did.
Barbie. It was bizarre.
We did. It was very bizarre. And I'll let you take it over after this. The 60s was G.I. Joe.
60s,
Um,
yeah, GI Joe. We had the Easy Bake Oven.
Etch a Sketch.
Um, Etch a Sketch, a lot of games, Operation,
Yeah.
Twister, Battleship, Hot Wheels made its
Mm.
debut. Chemistry labs were big. You know what? That's a dangerous thing to begin with because I remember having one when I was a kid, and that was back in the '80s. And I still, even back when I was a kid, I was like, wow, they let us have this stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. And now we're getting into the 70s. Since we're going into that, let's introduce our guest. Let's see what he has to say too about some of these toys. Maybe he can give us a little, sit in with us on this. But let's introduce Andrew Romano. Welcome, Andrew.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm well. How are you?
Good. This is my co-host Ken. This is my
Again?
co-writer Andrew.
Listen, I'm excited. I've heard a lot about you. I've been
Oh
friends with
boy.
Blaze for a while, and she's been talking about this book for so long, and the collaboration between you guys. And I'm really excited to get into the meat of it later in our interview to talk about how the book came about and everything. But first off, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot because I know you weren't prepared for toys. But since we discussed it, or started talking about it, maybe this is more your genre too, in terms of ages and things like that. Once we get into the 70s, 80s, 90s, so Ken, take it away with what the big ones were in the 70s, and then Andrew, if you want to jump in, any thoughts on these?
Well, we had started off in '70. We had the Light Bright, which I
Yep,
think a lot of us probably had.
definitely.
And
Uno,
it just made that into the Toy Hall of Fame, I believe.
yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Um, Hippity Hops in '71 and Uno in '72 and walkie talkies were huge in '73. Tonka toy trucks, Connect Four was huge. The Pet Rock was
Mm.
big. The year I was born, I mean, it makes sense. Star Wars figures came out, and that was a huge issue because they announced it, and the toys weren't available, and they did the whole mail away thing that became a huge debacle because people mailed away, and it took forever to get them. They didn't get it in time for Christmas. We also had Simon, and
Wow,
Atari in the 70s. Fond
Atari.
memories of Atari too,
Well, I was
actually.
going to say, what was your favorite game in Atari?
Um,
You
Believe it
remember?
or not, I didn't have Atari. I wound up getting in television in the early 80s,
Hmm.
to suffice. But one of my favorite games was Night Stalker and always played Donkey Kong and poker games.
Okay. I was a Jungle Hunt girl, and
Pitfall.
yeah, Pitfall. And then what was the other? Oh well, Pac. I mean, classic too. Pac-Man, Frogger, Donkey Kong. Those were all. How about you, Andrew?
Well, I only got introduced to video games when we got a Nintendo when I was
Mm,
about 6 or 7 years old. By my aunt gifted to us. So no Atari games for me.
gotcha.
But
Well,
on the toy side, most people don't know that that is the main reason why George Lucas is as wealthy as he is, because they didn't want the toy rights, and he
yep.
decided to take the toy rights. And he said, "I'll take that."
Well, he jumped
So
in right away and requested them, and the studio was like, "Yeah, go ahead."
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was an afterthought for them.
And poor Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill, who signed over their likeness because this stuff will be made forever in their image.
Although I do like the fact too that he and Spielberg swapped 5%. Lucas gave Spielberg 5% of Star Wars. Spielberg gave Lucas 5% of Close Encounters of a Third Kind, because neither of them knew which one was going to blow up, and they were both coming out at the same time. So they sort of hedged their bets, and it's also why Spielberg is significantly wealthier than he otherwise would be. I just love those random fun facts about
Yeah.
deals people have made. But you are forgetting one set of toys, although it was, we'll call it maybe niche, but it was a toy that and a series that spawned a very popular modern series, which would be Voltron.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So Voltron was huge for me growing up, and obviously that's where Power Rangers comes from. So
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's later on. We haven't gotten there
Voltron was more, yeah,
yet.
it was in the 80s, but yes,
well, it was like late 70s, early 80s, I think, because it was big in Japan,
correct.
and then they brought it to the US.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
Which,
80s would
yes.
have been what? 80s was Transformers, Rubik's Cube,
Yep.
Cabbage Patch Kids, right? Those were
Yep.
like the big three.
The Lego train, the BMX bike,
Hmm.
My Buddy.
My
Oh, was
buddy
that
was
the
big
80s?
too. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I just remember the commercial. My buddy, wherever you go, he wants to go. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
exactly.
it's the
yeah.
things that your brain remembers from all that long ago.
And the stuff that inspired the things of nightmares like Child's Play later on too.
Chucky. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then yeah, again, as Andrew said earlier, we had Nintendo and we also had laser tag in the 80s. That's still around and doing a thing. Actually, I just bought some guns myself recently to have some fun with. It was great. So I do want to jump in because you guys have known each other for a while, right? You have a book. You have a book, the most well-traveled squirrel in the whole wide world. I'm kind of curious, where did the dynamic start? Like, how did you guys meet, and how did the project come about?
Go ahead, Drew. I
Sure.
talk a lot on this show, so
Yeah, all right. So Blaze and I know each other originally through our church, or what was our church in Hoboken.
yeah.
And for years, I just got in the habit. At the time, I was just working in corporate finance. And when you're in your 20s and no one really cares, even though I had a cool job at the time, no one to the outside world was that cool to. So I had these other pursuits that I wanted to get into, the voice acting, the children's writing. And so I would just start mentioning that to people. So Blaze knew just through our interactions, especially once I learned that she was in the field, I was like, oh, I eventually want to write children's books. So I think she just heard that and sort of filed it away for another day. And then she was in with some friends doing the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting one year. And at least this is all hearsay now, so she can confirm or deny. But as she told me, she then looked up at that tree and sort of wondered aloud to her friends, hey, I wonder if any animals get stuck up in that tree. And her friends kind of laughed. And then they said, hey, that'd be a really good children's book. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And so she grabbed me after church one weekend soon thereafter and said, hey, I had this idea for a book. Do you have any samples of your writing? Because if I like how you write, I might want to work with you on this. So fortunately, I just wrote on the side all through college, like not taking any courses. I just liked creative writing and sent her some of what I wrote. And she liked it well enough that then she wanted to partner up on this.
Yep. It was funny because I just had a reunion with those guys. and for school, and they've mentioned it. They said, "How's that squirrel book doing?" And I said, "Actually, we have the series coming back out again and stuff." So Brian Varallo and Chris Rollo, Sean DeWillett, Justice Magano, I'll shout out to you guys because you guys were the ones that were with me and kind of, we're good for my career in terms of just coaxing me to follow what my thoughts were and creativity. So that was awesome. What I remember too is that I was talking to somebody else before mass started, and you were sitting in front of me, and you turned around and said, "I write kids books. Let's talk after church."
Okay, there you go.
That's what I remember.
That's probably correct then.
Yeah, it was awesome because we didn't know each other before. But then, listen, Andrew is an Eagles fan. He's from Philadelphia originally. So, like, we did have a lot in common.
So we can't be friends then. I'm sorry.
So we know.
I mean, winning creates a lot of enemies. So it comes with the territory, being now a Phillies fan and an Eagles fan. So bring it. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We've been talking about it every week. So, and we can do a recap now that we just mentioned the Eagles. So 10-1 for our Eagles and 7-4 for Giants and Jets. So still in it, third in the NFC East and West, or East and AFC East, right? For Jets. Right. So yeah, very, very exciting. See how this season goes. Still lots of games left, but looking good. Looking good. We wear our green.
Although after Sunday night, we might not quite have the defense that, say, San Francisco has for the playoffs, but we'll see. We certainly have the offense. I don't know about the defenses. Can be a little suspect at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I got a question for you going back to the book, and I'll start off with you, Blaze, and then pass it off to Andrew. Like, can you give me a little bit about what it's like, especially writing? Because I know, Blaze, you're a filmmaker too. You're a producer, but we're talking about a book now. How is it, and how's the process collaborating with someone else and putting a project together?
I mean, it's a fun process in terms of just meeting people, and our illustrator, which we didn't mention yet, but our illustrator, Sanja Nenic, is in Bosnia. She is related to Andrew's family, and she's an extremely talented illustrator. She's also in law school. I don't know if she still is, or if she's finished, or if she's doing something else. Andrew, you'll have to chime in on that. But, super talented. And so to work with talented people in this smaller setting group, and we really were kind of on our own timeline, so there was no corporation telling us what to do, or which I guess is good and bad, because maybe that's why we're coming back at it after so many years, and kind of book 2 is coming out, I think next month, we're hoping, or early 2023. Book 3 will follow. It's a nice series, but I've enjoyed it. It's just sometimes the collaborative process of like, let's get this done. Things happen, life takes control and takes over, where maybe if we had somebody that a publisher that was like, this has to be to us or you lose money, versus, okay, we all like and know each other and we're kind of doing it in our spare time. That's the only thing maybe, that I would do different moving forward. And I think that's what we've been kind of discussing, maybe to put the fire under us, blaze it up, I guess. So, yeah.
What about you, Andrew? How is it working with her?
Yeah, it just provides for lack of a better term, just a different process, because and really the structure primarily is, and I love the quote by Mark Twain, all generalizations are false, including this one. So generalizations being what they are, in general, Blaze will come to me with sort of the story arc, sort of the bones of the story. And then my primary job is to then put the meat on all those bones. And then we have a very iterative process about the exact wording and phrasing of things, all the way down to sometimes we'll spend 15, 20 minutes on a single word. And I don't mind that at all, because we both care about producing a really high quality product. Neither of us is coming at this just to go with quantity over quality. So that it can be frustrating at a time, because certainly we just want this out fast, but as with everything else, you can have things out good, fast, cheap, pick 2. And we would prefer it to be really good and relatively cheap, meaning inexpensive for many kids to access. So we're okay if then it takes a longer period of time. Because then once we get the story down, then we'll start to fill in Sanja, who will then start to illustrate it. And sometimes our writing has been inspired by the way she's drawn. Because and normally what the direction I gave her, and ours was the first professional project she had ever worked on, but I told her I did not want to give her too much direction. I wanted her to use the words, give her some semblance of what we were going for, but then let her create. I didn't want to step into that too much because that's not my domain. And I thought that we might inadvertently cut her short if we were a little too defining early on. But now that we've gotten to know each other and certainly what talent she has, we were both pleasantly surprised, let's say, when she came back with the first drawings, that then it lit our creative juices on fire as well.
Yeah, I think it was nice too that we had a formula that we kind of went not into it exactly, but that kind of grew within that first book of, okay, we have these characters, he's going to do this and he's going to do this. And, and we can carry that into every book. So we have the formula going into it. It was picking the places, and we did go to a lot of schools. It's just a really cool thing to do. And then it's educational as well, because we always incorporate some kind of learning element. So for us, we do see it bigger as an animated series, 100%. Like that was, in my vision, that was the first thing I thought of. But animation costs a lot more money than the book to get done. So we'll see, it's fingers crossed. We're just kind of moving along nicely, and who knows what can kind of, the sky's the limit for Tommy the squirrel. So.
Well, Andrew, too, one of the other things, so you guys have written this book together. Like, have you actually done anything else outside of this too, as a writer?
As a writer, I'm working on a lot of other projects sort of all the time. None that have been, we'll say, as successful or viable yet as our Tommy has been. But yeah, I'm working on, so a lot of what I do day to day is as a financial advisor and coach. So I'm working on some elements around children's education on that front. Mainly because when people talk when in the realm of money, it's always about financial literacy. But my contention is that I want to go more for financial fluency. So I'm actually working with another sort of health coach right now to come up with some languaging and maybe a different kind of series more built around educating children on some of the basic tenets of money, because that's certainly a topic that none of us really ever get access to, even at the high school or college level. And so I'm thinking of figuring out how best to combine the passion for writing and my skill of being able to take really adult topics and make it accessible to a 5-year-old. Because my guess would be if parents saw that in the bookstore, they might want to pick it up for their child, because sometimes, we have a lot of shame around topics that we don't yet know a lot about, and we sort of can stay in the dark. So I've been bubbling on that for quite a while. I have a whole laundry list, Ken, of other books and movie ideas. And I joke that sometimes I think I'm not to sound too patting myself on the back at times, but I kind of joke that I'm a walking think tank. I just need to find a do tank and a money tank to then help get this all out there.
I completely get it. I'm kind of the same way myself, to be honest. And I think Blaze can concur with that.
Yeah, we all are. I think that's sometimes I think, like, when you have so many ideas going on and then you have to prioritize, okay, what's your first, what's your second, what's your, and that's always the challenge that I've found, at least, is okay, prioritizing what's what, and then seeing it. I mean, not seeing things to fruition. I think I always see things through to fruition, but it's in Blaze time, I guess. So which is bad. So that's why I need crack the whip occasionally, So I want to ask Andrew voiceover stuff. So tell me about the book, the audio book that you just did. Tell me a little bit about it, and then we're going to play a sample and listen to it.
All right. So this was my very first audiobook project. Most of the voiceover work that I've done up till now, and I started doing professional voiceover work in 2007. So most of it has been trailers, promos, narrations. I once narrated the PBS documentary on the Flatiron Building. I did a promo video for a DC Comics release a couple of years ago. So I have some cool things out there that people would actually have either heard or be able to quickly look up on YouTube or on the PBS site in one case. And I actually, in this case, know personally the author, and she had a book out for quite a while, and there's potential that it might be getting made into a movie. So she immediately thought of me and asked if I would be willing to turn her book, which she published, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, and turn it into an audiobook. And she would, just me knowing her would love to have my voice on it, since she didn't want to put her own voice on it. And it's a novel, not an autobiography. So I'm always someone who, while my brain immediately was saying, no, 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 my mouth just said, sure. So I just dove right in, and I became then narrator. I did about 15 different voices for the novel. I then ended up producing it, editing it, all that, figuring out how to get it up onto Audible. And luckily I have a computer science degree as well, so that came in handy. But then also we used a friend of mine who is a female voice actor, because she liked the idea of having the main female lead in the book be a female, because it sort of gives the audio equivalent of those pictures where everything is black and white, except maybe the girl holding the rose and then the rose is red. So it's just kind of cool, because I've never heard any audiobook where just one singular voice was different from the narrator and all the other character voices. So yeah, it took me a few months. Luckily, again, she was going for good and cheap, but not so fast. So it took me a few months to work it in with everything else, but it's been out now on Audible for a few months.
What's the name of the book? Can you say?
It's called The Shoebox by Lisa Mercado Fernandez, or as I might say it in my narration voice, The Shoebox by Lisa Mercado Fernandez.
The wind blew Peter's windbreaker, whipping his long white hair against his face. He clamped a cigar between his teeth as he made his way slowly across the soft sand to the lifeguard chair that stood silhouetted against the evening sky. He raised one leg at a time to pull himself up the ladder, his feet twisted with arthritis and his knees aching. At the top, he sat heavily in the chair and rested his back against the faded white wood facing the stormy bay. He sighed as he lifted his cigar and inhaled. This was what he longed for. Time to himself, time to forget, and time to remember. The breeze felt different that night. He closed his eyes to the sound of waves hitting the rocks in the distance. The autumn wind blew his white hair, the chill stiffening his bones. Oh, now he could see her, young and beautiful again. He let the smoke of his cigar linger as he thought back over his life to discover how he'd come to this place, to this moment in time. And he remembered. He remembered everything. It had all begun with the shoebox.
Very nice.
So velvety.
I was going to say I would totally fall asleep to that.
I have a few friends that said I'm going to fall asleep to this thing. I'm like, okay,
spread across it.
I'm happy to be your Audible serotonin.
So you were talking also about doing all the production work on it too, right? I mean, because I got to give you a lot of credit. I've done other shows in the past, and some of the stuff we would do is we used to do a lot of like comedy sketches, and I mean I remember producing stuff where like I would do like 4 voices in it, and then break everything down, edit it, layer it, and I mean I could get like a 5 to 10 minute sketch down to a science in a couple hours after I was done. But man, I could only imagine what you had to go through to do an entire audiobook, like how long that whole process had to be.
Yeah, and I tracked this because I wanted to also be curious about it. And it was my first time through, so I was just using Audacity, but Audacity can do a lot of things. But the audiobook in recorded time is 9 hours total. It took me 18 hours worth of recording for all of my parts. And then the total editing and everything, probably all inclusive, about 80 total hours of work. Because it just took a while for me to sit with the female actress, get her recordings. And then I had to match that up, timestamp, and make sure I took out because I would initially record her parts just so I had it in, and then go back and take her recording of just her parts and then copy paste one by one and make sure the pacing was right, make sure the microphone sound was right. Because the last thing you want in listening, and I love audiobooks. I'm very much an audio learner, more so than visual or kinesthetic. And I did not want the audio narration itself or the voice or the audio quality to distract the listener. I wanted to just like, hopefully, my voice is very nice to listen to. The first thing that would distract you is if her voice comes in and the tone is off, or the volume or the pitch or all that. So I spent a significant amount of time. Also, it's a book by a friend of mine, so I wanted it to be as perfect as possible. So I definitely more or less wasted, if you will, not wasted, but spent a lot of hours on a few select parts just to make sure it was perfect, and re-recorded things, had Fane, the female actress, re-record some things, much to her chagrin. But in the end, the author, I just saw her over Thanksgiving, and she said already it's her own book, and she got to listen to it as we were developing it. And we released it 2 months ago. She's like, I've already listened to it 5 times through. So, hey, that's all you can really ask for if the author is that in love with the recording.
That's one of the best things, I think, is when you write something for someone else or do something for someone else that's creative, whether it's a portrait, somebody who's an artist, or whether it's, I remember doing The Nobleman, which was a period piece that was about a real man's life. And when he read it and cried and told me he cried, I mean, it was so moving and felt like, okay, didn't the money that I made for it or whatever, the future to it didn't matter as long as he was happy with it. And I'm sure that gave you, since it was a friend of yours too, a lot of, touched your heart for sure.
Yeah, and initially when I sent her the first few chapters, it brought her to tears, because to have a story that is so beloved to her and to hear that come to life, as she put it, I just know it was a very emotional process for her. Yeah. But initially, early on, she kept writing back to me, this is amazing. This is amazing. I said, Lisa, I can take criticism. I actually want criticism, because we need to make this great for you. Yeah. And you just telling me everything is great. And she's like, no, trust me. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and sometimes just the narrator will bring me right out of a book that I wanted to read, and I'll stop listening. She's like, no, this is good. Keep it up. So it was just very encouraging, sort of from the get-go, that I was able to hit the right tone that she wanted. And I spent a lot of time with her up front, making sure I had the character voices down, because the last thing I wanted to do was there's a lot of dialogue in the book. And the last thing with some of the characters I wanted to do was record it sort of in my own head in a way, and then have her come back after I spent an hour and a half on a character and say, no, it should be more like this. So we did a lot of, we did a good job early on of making sure that I was getting down all the different voices. And then occasionally the book is set in Boston. And I said, look, I'm not going to try to do a Boston accent for an extended period, but if there's a side character that just sort of make the scene, and there was a scene or two with, say, a Boston construction worker or something like that, and I got to try my chops out at some of those more accents, which is not my strong suit, but I think it came out quite well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think we actually have another clip, but this is a promo, so some of your promo work. Tell us a little bit about that before I play it.
Yeah, this is just from my demo reel, but for me, this is my most fun work. Yeah. I know I have a somewhat unique talent stack with my vocal cords, that I can do the really deep, more intense voice, the movie trailer thing, all the way up to and including Mickey Mouse. So I have a really unique wide range to my vocal cords, but the promo stuff and the trailer stuff is, to me, the most fun, because when I do it, one, it just makes people smile, because not everyone can do that. And so when it comes out of this face, it sort of always just makes people laugh, and it's just funny. And I love bringing joy to people in that small way, but also it does actually feel like you're giving your entire chest cavity a massage when you do that deep vibrato through your entire voice.
Yeah, you actually did one for me, I remember, for one of my movies that Ken was also in, Speed, Damon and Holly.
Damon is single. Holly is too. When their friends push them into trying something new, life in the dating fast lane spins out of control. Will it be a match made in heaven, or will all hell break loose? Silver Phoenix Entertainment presents Speed, Damon and Holly.
All right.
Oh,
yes, exactly.
okay.
The trailer, yeah.
Which Sonia drew, did some artwork for that as well.
Yes, and Sonia did the drawing, exactly. So that's how you kind of mix it up a little bit. Okay, so here we go. Let's play the promo for you now.
The season premiere of 24 begins now. Viewer discretion is advised. Fringe will return in 60 seconds.
What do you think,
I didn't know that was you.
Yeah, I wish. Luckily, I do sound like the professionals that get paid a lot of money to do that, which is great because I'm like, okay, at least my voice sounds close enough, but I've not yet landed any of those big national gigs.
Do
But it
you
is
do you
also fun.
find your I was saying, sorry. Do you find yourself once in a while just maybe in the shower, just going in a world?
So I used to do a lot of that in Hoboken when I'd be coming back. This is before I was a voice actor. I just was having, it was a fun party trick to do out at the bars or with friends. And I would be walking home at 1 or 2 a.m. and I would just be playing with it because I just enjoyed the instrument, if you will. And so, yeah, I would do things like coming this Thursday, coming this Thursday, coming this Thursday, and just be playing with it. And I always made sure that there were not too many people around. Not that I was embarrassed, but, you know, especially when you're talking this voice, you don't want, especially young females in the dark, being unnecessarily scared for, you know, and that's what I love about the voice in general, because you can take anything and make it sound incredibly intense and serious. So there's a comedian, Pablo Francisco, who does a bit on this. I think I do a better voice than he does, but he is much funnier about it than me. But he says, you know, something like, you know, little Billy went to the park. You're like, oh, Billy, go have a good time. But then if you go, little Billy went to the park, you're like, no, Billy, don't go. So,
Yep.
It's so true. Do you have a dream role that you'd love to do? Like, is there a movie or a TV series out that you're like, that is what I want to do?
I would love to just do one Hollywood movie trailer, like the old school Don LaFontaine, truly the coming this October, and just something really intense, or a more national spot like the next on Fox. So if I got just one of those, I would die happy.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
I'm going to put in the air there, like the NFL, like for an Eagles game or something. That would be amazing.
And you do know who used to do all of the NFL films, yes?
Yes.
Harry Callis. So,
yeah, Harry
I
Callis.
mean, and now Liev Schreiber does a lot of them, and he has got a great voice for those kinds of things. No, not many people know he does those, but that would be cool if I got an NFL films gig. That'd be sweet.
Yep, Harry Callis. He's definitely missed.
Going back to the audiobook, did you record all of the individual characters at once, or was it done over a progression? And if you did you actually have to go back to remember how you did those voices?
So I went with just changing my voice on the fly and recording it sort of in a single stream. So my process was, ahead of time, I would have every chapter laid out of the character voices involved. And then, yes, for the ones that maybe show up in chapter 1, 2, or 3, and then not again until chapter 30, I created a voice key for myself, which was a separate audio file with me reading a part as that character. And it was all of a 1 or 2 second blip. But then that got me, I'm very much a mimic by ear type voice actor. You know, you give me someone to listen to or say, hey, can you read it like this? And I can almost on pitch get it right back to you in that way. So for me, yeah, it was just having that key, that legend of the different voices I was doing. And then I would just record it through. And then if well, certainly not if, but as then I messed up or too much breath, or I would just tap on my microphone like that, and your audience can hear that creates a significant audio signature, so that then it made my job easier as the producer going back to know, hey, where did I mess up? Because I would just have to look for the crazy large signature.
You're looking for the ping levels.
Yeah, rather than having to listen through to the end. So the first time I did a chapter, it took a lot longer because I did not know or think to do that. And then I was doing it in a way. And then, of course, me being the dullard that I am, it took until I did one of the first chapters with Fane, and she just naturally, when she messed up, she just tapped on the microphone. I'm like, oh, that's a much easier way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any processes that we always ask everybody one question? We say, if you could give a piece of advice to anyone that's just starting in the business, whether that's for voiceover or for in the creative endeavor for writing, what would it be? And also if you can incorporate a little bit of, what your steps are for keeping your voice healthy, because that's, I think that's so important and people forget about that.
So on the voice side, go get a microphone and just get really used to, one, recording your voice. 2, hearing your voice played back, and 3, getting at least somewhat facile with whatever software you choose, be it Audacity, GarageBand, etc. A lot of people that want to get into voice acting, or at least like the idea of, hey, I can get paid to talk, they don't learn what instrument they have in their vocal cords. And that's what you really need to first get familiar with, is my range and my tone. And once you also get used to hearing your own voice, you can disembody yourself from and be much more constructively critical of your own voice. Especially nowadays when you're doing auditions, you're not often going into a booth anymore. I get auditions in my email box, and I have to take the direction that's written there and be my own casting director in a way and just submit. And it's a little bit more fingers crossed now than it used to be, because a casting director could then ask you for a different level or pitch or tone or speed or whatever. And now you sort of have to listen for that on your own. So just get really good. You don't need, like, the microphone I'm using is a Blue microphone. It's maybe $250. You do not need to spend that much money on one, but this is one that will last me a decade. And so it's just like when we all called home in the late 80s or early 90s, and you left a message on your parents' answering machine, and then you beat them home, and then you heard your voice back and it sounded really weird. And most people now know this, but the reason it sounds weird is because when we're speaking, we're hearing our own voice through the vibrato of our bones in our face echoing back. And so we hear it differently. So once I sort of got over the, not awkwardness, but the unusualness of hearing my own voice, now I can hear my own voice as it's being, like when Blaze played that earlier, and it's not nails on a chalkboard. It's just, okay, that's my voice. And I just can then listen for, is that to my quality or not? So that's on the voiceover side. There's also some great resources out there. We can put it in the show notes later, Blaze, of like the one website that I send a lot of people to, just because you can sign up for free and do a weekly audio contest and get feedback from other voice actors. And it's just a nice, easy, low point of entry. It's free too, to just do some of their sample stuff. On the writing side, even though, writers can be a little wacky in the rest of their lives, I know someone like Stephen King. Most people don't know he writes, I think, 10,000 words a day, and most of it is garbage. And he admits most of it is garbage. Yeah. And so it's not about the goal. And this is a big thing for me over the last couple of years, is not having the goal of a thing rather than the system for a thing. So for example, most people want the goal of health, but very few have a system to be healthy. Everyone wants that bikini body. Very few people either attain it or then maintain it because they don't have a system around their health. If you want to be a writer, you be a writer by first being a writer, not doing writing or then having some book deal. We all want to have the book deal. We all want to be published, but you have to first be a writer. And a writer does what? Is someone who writes, and someone who writes regularly and consistently. So for me, I don't always have the time in the rest of my life to write every single day, but I allow my creativity, and I'm always coming up with ideas, and I have a little notepad on my phone to just at least get those ideas down and continue sort of scratching that itch, as well as then communicating it out loud to the world. And like all of my clients on the financial side, they all know that I write children's books, and then I'm a voice actor. So I have sort of a community around me as well that's always checking in on, hey, how's that all going? And then as far as protecting your voice, so this is something I'm learning right now after doing an audiobook, and definitely did not warm up. And if someone like Adele warms up every evening before her performance, you would think that I should as well, especially when I'm getting in and recording, talking like this for hours on end at times. And usually my typical session would be for 1 to 3 hours. And I did not. I just came in cold every time. And sometimes having the terrible habit, looking back, of just sipping on some water and or coffee, which is probably coffee not the best.
Coffee is not the best.
Drying.
Not for your vocal cords, nor for speed. Because then you just tend to speak at maybe a 2.0 New York speed, and maybe you're a bit more at this pace, not coming back down to this pace, and then allowing the user, the listener, to bump it up to 2.0 speed. You should not be the one presenting it. That works for us New Yorkers. It does not work for most other listeners. So for me, and so I'm dealing with that now. I have some inflammation in my throat that that's been around for a few months, and I just saw my ENT a couple days ago. So I've got some good medication just to sort of clear that all up. But yeah, I guess the best way to take care of your voice, if maybe not the best, but one key thing that I did not do that I wish I would have heard to do was to properly warm up, especially before each session. Because up until then, everything I ever recorded was about 30 seconds in length. The promo, trailer, auditions are very short clip, and you really don't necessarily need to warm up in that same way.
Yeah, exactly. I have some tips for you for your inflammation, so I'll hook you up.
Great.
Well, man, this has been incredible. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being our guest here and sticking around too for the toy talk and everything, or starting with the toy talk actually before we even talked about you. We appreciate that. And anything you have coming up that you want to talk about, anything you have, in the pipeline that you want to tell everybody?
Let's see, on the creative side, no, I mean, we'll have, book number 2.
Yeah.
Hopefully coming out soon. Book number 3 is written. We're just working on then, finalizing some of that stuff. So that'll just be fun and sort of in the works. And then I'm working with, I think I mentioned earlier, with a friend of mine, at least for now, where the title we're working with is called Real Fluency. So we're going to combine Instagram Reels with then having some characters in different countries and socioeconomic backgrounds become, instead of pen pals, more like real pals. And so real being a play on words between REEL and REAL. And so it'll be a way for, at least to the young adult crowd, to teach them things like financial topics, but through the lens of not just a book, although we're going to work on that. It'll be through some of these shorter, as we know, we all have the attention spans of gnats and goldfish. So in that more 20 to 60 second clips, we'll have these characters exchange reels with each other to teach each other about, things like money, but also just, topics of the day that might be a bit more relevant to a young adult set that maybe aren't quite as prevalent as we would like them to be on things like Instagram and TikTok versus a lot of the other mental garbage that's currently out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to let everybody know the most well-traveled squirrel in the whole wide world is available on Amazon right now. Makes a great Christmas gift with the holidays coming up. I mean, I'm not saying go get it, but I'm saying go get it. All right. I want to thank Andrew for hanging out with us. It was definitely a pleasure and honor to finally to get I got to put a face to the name actually. Finally, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Likewise, I thank you guys for having me. You both have much better backgrounds than I do. Fortunately, but the way my office faces, it faces out to the Hudson River, so it does not provide great backlighting, but at least this blank wall does.
Ken, does Deadpool want to say something to us?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Hold on a second.
Hey, I feel a little lightheaded. Oh no, it's the body. Definitely the missing body.
Oh, I guess that kind of said it right there.
Clearing the throat is exactly what you should not do as a voiceover artist or singer. Thanks a lot, Deadpool. Anyway, thank you so much again, Andrew, and we'll be in touch soon anyway, you and I for sure. But thank you again for joining us, and cheers.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both. Cheers.
Thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Take care.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Woo!
Man, what?
All right.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. And listen, can I explain again how talented he is? Just the velvety quality of his voice is just ridiculous. And I'm gonna say it. It's a little sexy. Not gonna lie. All right.
Listen, I said I could fall asleep to it every night, so so there we go. But no, I was very lucky being in church and then meeting someone like him who happened to overhear me, and then we just started this project, and I see it actually really going for it. Honestly, it does feel like a lifelong project. I'm not going to lie, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because he's actually become a friend too, and someone I care about. So it's good to work with somebody like that. I always say that I want to work with people that I care about too, and not just strangers that I'm doing one-offs with. So
wait, so why are you working with me again?
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, we do have to do some business here. in the kitchen with Nicole and talk about some gadgets that she may have for us in the kitchen to use. So let's roll that clip.
What's up, Ken and Blaze? Happy holidays, happy December. I'm back in the kitchen because we're talking about toys today, our favorites, and what better time to share some of my favorite kitchen gadgets. First up, I have to say that the Iwatani kitchen torch, which attaches to good old-fashioned butane. Did I just say good old-fashioned and butane in the same sentence? I did. This is where it's at. I use this to torch bananas. I might use it to garnish, I don't know, like a candied orange slice for a drink. It's just super fun and I never get tired of it. Never mind making your own s'mores. 2, a microplane. This is going to be perfect for zesting lemons. I like it when I'm cooking with garlic to get it to that like melt in your mouth texture. You will not regret this investment. A little boring, but if you have the strength to squeeze the bejesus out of lemons and limes like I do, why not just squeeze the juice directly into a measuring cup and strain the pits and the pith with a little tiny strainer? How cute is this guy? And that's wire mesh. Okay, who's ready for some balls? I mean, meatballs. This is a perfect little scooper that you can also use, of course, for cookies. Perfect this time of year. You'll get great uniformity, whatever you're using this for. I will say, last but not least, you can kind of see it in the background, my Breville countertop oven. I know it's not a gadget, it's an appliance, but I can't say enough about it. It does slow cooking, air frying, roasting, broiling, toasting, and of course, cooking those cookies to perfection. So whether you want to spend a little or a lot this holiday season on someone who spends a lot of time in the kitchen, those are some of my ideas. As far as favorite toys, who doesn't love a Cabbage Patch doll? Go find one of those for someone special too. Ken and Blaze, happy holidays. Can't wait to see you very soon. Back to you both in the studio.
Nicole and that ball scooper, I'm telling you.
I had some images in my head, and luckily it's not what I had in my head. So I do want to thank Nicole for that and kind of bringing everything full circle, going back to gadgets and toys for the holidays. So
yeah, listen, she had the torch ready to go. She had the ball scooper. She was. I would do that for melon as well. I think just keep melon. It's pretty cool. Ice cream, sherbet, the whole works.
Too many jokes still floating around in my head.
I know. All right, so back to the toys. Let's finish up this segment. So 1990s, we had the Furby.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've seen now. My goddaughter the other day I saw in Hoboken. She got for her birthday some kind of, I'm blanking on what it was called, but it was a cauldron, and it was this stuffed animal, and you literally do like. You have a little wand and it smokes and this doll rises from the bottom. It's like very strange, but you would do these like magic spells. I don't know. But the Furby has really evolved because that's what it reminded me of, the Furby, a little bit, like just the look of it.
Was it Magic Mixies?
It was Magic Mixies. Thank you. Yeah. How do you know about Magic Mixies? That's what I want to know.
The power and quickness of Google.
Yes, there we go. Magic Mixies. Yeah, it was really interesting. But
I believe my niece actually has one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it's the rage this year, so yeah. I don't know. But all right, so we had Furby, we had the Power Rangers, and we had the Teenage
Power Rangers.
That kind of came into the 90s from the 80s, right?
And Andrew actually kind of helped us out earlier too by explaining, Voltron was the predecessor to Power Rangers, essentially kind of the same thing with the lions initially, and then the automobiles or the vehicles later in the later seasons. Actually,
that wasn't for Transformers.
No, Voltron. Well,
I thought it was
separate things. Okay. No, Voltron was the 5 lions that would come together to make the one robot. And then as the show progressed, they actually went to vehicles too. It was like a helicopter and cars, and yeah, people kind of tend to shy away from that version, but yeah, because the lions were a little more traditional and I think super cool, to be honest.
I was still playing with my Barbie dream house, probably. No
Fair enough.
For me. No Voltron for me. Let's see. The 2000 was the Bratz dolls and Nintendo Wii, which I do have a Wii and I still play it to this day. I love the Wii. I love the Wii.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2010, PlayStation and Xbox. So, and I didn't get into the 2020s because it's too soon. It's, that's not a full decade. So,
well, I mean, yeah, we're talking more like Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 at that point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
oh my god, yeah, because PlayStation was out back in the 90s. Actually, I remember having mine before 2000 hit. It's
Yeah.
a lot of wasted time, but maybe not wasted, more non-productive but fun. You know,
Well, listen, we do have one thing left, and because we talk technology, this is the perfect segue for that.
let's do that.
Okay. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty. On today's episode of Beachcombing with Blaze, I'm in beautiful Fire Island, New York. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what makes barnacles so special. First, they are filtering organisms, which play a super important role in the food chain. But did you know that the sticky substance they use to cling to piers and other things like this have helped engineers design a strong glue? It's true. Barnacles secrete a strong cement made of proteins that form into polymers. This anchors onto other surfaces. Researchers have replicated this, and such a glue could offer a much more effective way to treat traumatic injuries and also help bleeding during surgery. Who knew a barnacle could be responsible for saving your life? Well, until next time, explore, learn, love the adventure.
You bring it together every week. I'm impressed and I'm happy every week for what you actually bring to the table and help
Yeah.
this guy like me learn something new. So
Thank
because
you.
I need to learn a lot more. I find as I'm getting older, I'm actually getting a little more stupid. So, yes, thank you.
Stop it. I learned a lot from Andrew actually today.
Yes.
The Steven Spielberg and George Lucas bit of factoids. I didn't know that, so that was really cool. See, I love that we have somebody on the show that teaches us a few things.
Well, you had that trifecta with Spielberg and Lucas and Coppola, where they would come in and actually help each other out, go onto each other's sets, give pointers, advice. Spielberg directed like a scene or two in one of the Star Wars movies for Lucas at one point and helped pitch in ideas. So yeah, they all kind of paid it forward for each other and for the generations afterwards.
Right. Well, and that's what I feel like we're kind of doing here too, and with this show, but also with just the projects that we're doing and people we're doing it with. So on that note, everybody have a great week. It's December 1st, so happy December, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
And a huge thank you to Andrew. Thank you again for hanging out with us tonight.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
You've just enjoyed the Silver Phoenix Happy Hour with Blaze and Ken.